2 months ago, I put out a video diving into some intriguing comments made by Ghislaine Maxwell during her time in prison. She mentioned Meghan Markle in a way that totally had people sitting up and taking notice. Talking about a resume or a CV that didn't sound like the standard professional kind. Instead, it hinted at a unique set of skills, something along the lines of role-playing in more mature, entertainment-orientated context. It was a kind of detail that stuck with people, sparking questions about connections in Hollywood and beyond. Hi everyone, it's Kelt here, just bringing you my thoughts on the British royal family and Harry and Meghan. And this time it's about Ghislaine Maxwell and the Epstein connections, and Meghan maybe being in the heart of this. And now, just in the last couple of weeks, we've seen a fresh wave of documents from the Jeffrey Epstein case unsealed, pulling even more threads into the light. These files don't just revisit old ground. They name-drop figures at the highest levels of British society, including, believe it or not, the late Queen Elizabeth II. I've always said that big stuff was going to come out. I've said it for years. It's like watching an intricate web slowly unravel, one connection at a time. And how deep does this actually go? So let's take a look at some facts as they've emerged and connect some of the dots analytically and explore a few measured what-ifs to see what patterns might be pointing toward. Let's start with that Maxwell mention of Meghan. From what surfaced in those prison interviews and related reports, Ghislaine Maxwell claimed to have come across this CV during her associations in elite circles. It wasn't a typical actor's headshot reel or a corporate ladder climber's list of achievements. No, this one allegedly highlighted talents suited for adult-themed scenarios, perhaps tied to private events or high-end networking in Los Angeles. And then there's this alias that bubbled up in the talk afterward, Flower. It's not a huge leap to wonder if that was a code name or a playful pseudonym used in those circles, something innocuous on the surface, but loaded with implication once you layer in the Epstein context. Epstein's world was full of such veiled references, nicknames for privacy or maybe for deniability. Factually, Meghan's early career did brush against Hollywood's edgier underbelly, although she never really worked in Hollywood. She did have roles in shows like Suits, but before that there were auditions, parties, and connections that any aspiring actress navigates. Harry's own words in their Netflix series add yet another layer. He laughed about a story where Meghan, during an outdoor adventure with him, just handled a personal moment in the woods without hesitation, saying there was nothing she wouldn't do to prove her adventurous spirit. On its own, it's a light-hearted anecdote about resilience, but viewed through the lens of these Epstein-Maxwell allegations, it takes on a shadow, doesn't it? What if that boldness, that willingness to push boundaries, was exactly the kind of trait that caught the eye in those exclusive, high-stakes gatherings? I'm not saying it did, but it's a what-if worth pondering analytically. In a town like Hollywood, where proximity to power can make or break a career, does an unusual CV like the one described open doors or trapdoors? Now, let's pivot to the royal side, because these new documents from Epstein's estate are where things get particularly seismic. Released just days ago, they include emails and notes from Epstein's inner circle, and one stands out, a message from Nobel Prize-winning physicist Murray Gell-Mann. In it, he refers to the Queen as one of Epstein's clients, specifically noting that she sought his advice on financial matters. Can you believe this? If true, the late Queen not only used the worst paedophile in UK's history, the late Jimmy Savile, not only used him for PR advice and how to run the palace, but possibly used Epstein for financial advice. Elizabeth II, with access to her own long-standing bankers like Coutts, practically the royal family's financial backbone, allegedly turning to Epstein for tips. That's the kind of detail that demands scrutiny. On the surface, Epstein positioned himself as a money manager for the ultra-wealthy, rubbing shoulders with billionaires and influencers. But we know now, through court records and survivor accounts, that his operations were a front for something far darker. So, what does this suggest? If true, it could point to Epstein's knack for infiltrating trusted spaces, offering just enough legitimate value to gain leverage. What if the Queen's involvement was purely transactional, a quick consult on investments amid her vast portfolio? Plausible, given her hands-on approach to the family's finances. But here's an even sharper what if. Epstein was a braggart, and so was Andrew, his longtime associate. They both like to brag. Emails in these files show Andrew inviting Epstein and Maxwell to intimate royal events, like the Queen's 2000 birthday celebration at Windsor Castle. Imagine Andrew, eager to impress his friend, dropping a casual, "I'll run this by mum" or mummy during a chat about details. Epstein then spins it into advising the monarch, inflating his ego and his Rolodex. It's a pattern we see elsewhere, boasts that blur into half-truths. The palace has denied any direct financial ties, calling it unsubstantiated hearsay, which aligns with their consistent pushback on Epstein rumours. Yet, the sheer volume of these references, with Camilla mentioned 9 times, even Princess Diana popping up 14, paints a picture of Epstein's orbit grazing the monarchy repeatedly. Speaking of Andrew, his links are the most documented and damning in these files. We already knew from earlier releases that he and Epstein went way back, introduced through Maxwell in the late 90s. Andrew hosted them at Royal Lodge in 2006, right around Princess Beatrice's 18th birthday celebrations. Photos from that era show Epstein, Maxwell, and even Harvey Weinstein in the mix at Andrew's events. Palace sources insist Beatrice and Eugenie never actually met Epstein, refuting claims in his emails that Sarah Ferguson toasted his release from jail with the girls present. But the proximity raises legitimate questions. Coming-of-age milestones like an 18th birthday in royal circles are not casual affairs. They're networking goldmines, full of influential guests. Analytically, Epstein thrived on that, gaining access to young connected people under the guise of mentorship or philanthropy. What if Beatrice's party was not an isolated invitation, but part of a broader pattern where Epstein positioned himself as a friend of the family? Not alleging anything overt happened, there's no concrete evidence of that with the princesses, but the optics are troubling. Eugenie's wedding in 2018 even had Andrew's ties to Epstein simmering in the background, with reports of fallout whispers among guests. And now, With Charles having stripped Andrew of his military titles and public duties last year, amid the ongoing scrutiny, it feels like the family drawing lines in the sand. These files do not prove complicity across the board, but they do highlight how Epstein's web ensnared not just individuals, but institutions. The monarchy, with its emphasis on duty and discretion, might have overlooked red flags in favour of maintaining alliances, a calculated risk that, in hindsight, looks like vulnerability. This all evokes the image of an octopus, tentacles reaching into entertainment, finance, and royalty alike. Epstein wasn't operating in a vacuum. His estate emails show communications with academics like Noam Chomsky, politicians like Steve Bannon, and yes, those British elites. On social media, particularly X, the reaction has been electric since these drops. Posts are flooding in, with users sharing that old photo of Epstein and Maxwell lounging at a royal cottage on the Sandringham estate, Queen Elizabeth's own grounds. One viral thread questions why UK media fixates on minor royal scandals while soft-pedalling this. I've always said it's not about Meghan's jam disasters and cooking videos and her choice in music or her alleged invisible children's milestones. It's not about that. Those are the real distractions. Another ties it straight to Meghan, resurfing Maxwell's CV claims and speculating if her flower alias links to Epstein's infamous island visitors logs. Mainstream outlets like the BBC and Express are covering the Queen's client tag cautiously, emphasising denials and context, but the undercurrent is there. Why now? These documents have trickled out over years, but this batch feels timed to amplify pressure, perhaps amid Andrew's stalled settlement talks or broader accountability pushes. The facts compel us to ask, how does a figure like Epstein gain such traction? It speaks to power's blind spots, the allure of wealth masking moral hazards. For Meghan, it reframes her outsider narrative. Did those early Hollywood hurdles involve compromises we can only guess at? But I also think, wouldn't she have gone higher? Wouldn't she have actually got somewhere in Hollywood if she was, as has been suggested? Or were there other plans for her to infiltrate royalty? For the royals, it tests their fortress of protocol. If Elizabeth sought Epstein's counsel, was it naivety or a deeper entanglement? And for Beatrice and Eugenie, caught in the crossfire, does this shadow their futures, or does it galvanise reform? There are no straightforward answers yet, but these revelations remind us that transparency isn't optional, it's essential. The web keeps expanding, and as more files surface, we'll see clearer contours. What do you make of these connections? Drop your thoughts below. If this has raised questions for you, hit that like button, subscribe for more breakdowns, click join to join my memberships for even deeper dives, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.